Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name's Jeff, the Backyard Builder, and today we're going to be replacing this janky old folding table coffee bar with this beautiful modern farmhouse accent piece. Let's go ahead and jump right in. The inspiration for today's build comes from none other than Babe's internet scrolling. She was scrolling through looking for home projects, looking for some inspiration, and came across this little modern farmhouse coffee bar build. She found this on a website called Shanty to Chic. On their website, you'll find a lot of free downloadable plans, and all of those plans come with a list of all the materials that you'll need at the beginning, as well as a cut list, so you know exactly how many boards and how many sheets of plywood you need for each project. And then they come with step-by-step instructions, so it's very user-friendly, perfect for beginner DIY projects. So the first step of building this coffee bar was to build the main cabinet carcass. When we were picking up the plywood, we had them pre-cut our plywood into the correct width strips so that it would fit into our car better, and then all I had to do was cut it to length. So we had them pre-cut it, and depending on which store you buy your lumber from, sometimes if it's just a couple cuts, they'll cut it for free. Sometimes it's like 25 cents, 50 cents a cut. Either way, very convenient to have them cut down the big bulky sheets of plywood if you know the widths that you need ahead of time. So if you know what you're going to need ahead of time, I highly recommend that. Makes it a lot easier to haul all that lumber home, especially if you don't have a pickup truck or a large car to carry it in. The first part of the carcass that we're assembling is the face trim, and so I took all the boards we needed, cut them down to length, and then we took them over to our pocket hole jig to start drilling some pocket holes. Since Babes was the one that found the instructions and found this design, I wanted her to be involved in the build as well, so I was teaching her how to use the pocket hole jig. It's very easy to use. You put your piece of wood in, clamp it down, and drill. That's really it. And so we went through all the face frame pieces and drilled our pocket holes. After we had all our face frame trim pieces cut and drilled for pocket holes, we assembled using wood glue, and then final assembly with the pocket holes to tie it all together. So after we had our face frame assembled, it was time to assemble the main carcass. Like I said, we already had our plywood cut to the correct width. I just had to cut it down to the correct length for each piece. So we cut all the pieces we needed down to the correct length, drilled our pocket holes, and then we assembled the carcass and attached it to the face frame to add the extra support. Next up, we cut and assembled the main divider, which separates the left and right half of the cabinet. So just like with the other pieces, we cut our plywood and trim piece to length, drilled our pocket holes, and then glued and screwed it all together. This design calls out having 3 shelves in the cabinet. You can have as many shelves or as few shelves as you want. We liked the look of the 3 shelves, and it worked well for what we were going to be storing inside. We did change the height of the shelves a little bit just to customize it a bit to what we needed. So we have 2 shelves on the left side and 1 lower shelf on the right side, so that we can keep our older coffee maker and taller items on the right, and then we have 3 different storage spaces on the left. After we finished attaching the 3 shelves, the main body of the coffee bar was complete, and so I did my first round of sanding and my first round of painting. First of many. Now that the main body of the coffee bar was complete, it was time to mount it into the wall of the kitchen to give it that built-in look. So the first thing we had to do was notch out and cut out the section of trim where we were going to install this cabinet. So I had to cut out the floorboard and also the trim on the half wall that runs around our kitchen and dining room. As soon as I started cutting into that baseboard and that trim, there was no going back. This was happening. Once I had the notches cut out in the trim, it was time for a dry fit. So I slid the main coffee bar body into the slot, fit like a glove. Like a glove. and then I cut and added a couple support pieces to go across the back just to give it a little extra strength. So originally I was just going to butt the coffee bar up against the kitchen wall and then paint the wall white to match the rest of the coffee bar, but we actually found some backsplash that looks like wood paneling from a previous project, or a project that never happened. I'm not really sure where it came from, but we found some old backsplash, and it was just enough to do the whole back of the coffee bar and add just a little bit of a pop, a little bit of an accent piece. So we used this wood paneling backsplash that looks like wood paneling, and we use that as the back of the coffee bar. So the next step of the project was to build the 2 cabinet doors. So I took my boards and I cut them all to length, drilled the pocket holes, and assembled. You're very familiar with this process by now. Oh, and then after that, guess what? I painted it all white. Surprise, surprise. After I had done the first round of paint on the trim, I added the 1/4-inch back panels to the door, and then I painted it all white again, you know, just for fun. There's a few different styles of door that came with this design. You could either build solid cabinet doors, you could use some wire mesh if you wanted. We decided we want to go for a stained wood plank look. That way it'll match the top of the coffee bar and just kind of bring the whole piece together and look nice. So I had a bunch of pallets, a bunch of pallet wood out in the garage. So I cut those all to length, and then I just sanded the top side because that's the only side you're going to see. All the others are hidden inside the cabinet door. So no point sanding what I don't need to sand. And just in case you were concerned about my safety, I am wearing my safety Crocs for this project. So just so you're aware, you know, I am being safe. So the stain we decided to use for this project was Minwax Dark Walnut. And this was just because we thought the contrast of the dark wood stain with the white paint, it would have a good contrast. Plus it kind of matched some of the wood tones and the colors that we already had in our kitchen and dining room area. After I had the wood strips stained, I assembled it in the door, and I had to kind of mix and match, try different pieces until I found the best combination that would have the tightest fit within the frame of the door. Once I found the best combination that had the best fit, I added a layer of glue along the back of the cabinet door and attached all the wood strips with brad nails. Teddy's a helper. After we had the doors assembled, it was time to install the hardware, and we went with matte black hardware, very similar to the sample model on the instructions. After I attached the door handles, we went ahead and mounted the doors, and to do this I got a deck of cards and used those as spacers to get even spacing all the way around between the door and the main body of the cabinet. Playing cards are a great thing to use for spacers. Because they're so thin, you can get a pretty exact fit, and almost everyone has ample playing cards. I've got so many decks of playing cards around the house, I don't even know where half of them came from, but I've got plenty of extras, so I have plenty of spacers to get that exact fit. After I had my spacing worked out and I marked where my hinges would go, I mounted the hinges to the main cabinet body and then to the door itself. And then once I had the one door attached and mounted to my satisfaction, I just rinsed and repeated with the other door. And the final piece of this coffee bar project is the coffee bar top itself. So similar to every other step of this project, we took our boards, cut them to length, and drilled our pocket holes, this time just along one long side of each board, and then we glued and screwed them all together. After the glue had dried and we had assembled the top, it was time for everyone's favorite pastime, sanding. And more sanding. And then after that, you know, just for fun, I sanded some more. I just want to take a second to thank everyone for tuning into my channel once again and following me along on this coffee bar project. If you like the channel and you like these videos, please go ahead and like and subscribe. It really helps me out and helps me to know what kind of projects you enjoy watching so that I know which kind of projects to work on in the future. And of course, I'm wearing my mask, so I have to do my obligatory Bane impression.
You think darkness is your ally?
After I had sanded the entire wood top to a nice smooth finish, I took it outside, wiped off all the dust, and wetted it down with a spray bottle just filled with water. The reason I do this is because if you sand the wood and then spray it with water, that'll raise all the wood fibers, and then you sand it one last time and it makes everything buttery smooth. I noticed after sanding that there were a couple small voids, so I created a mixture of sawdust and wood glue and filled those voids in, and then guess what? I sanded it again. Same as with the pallet wood on the doors, we used the Minwax dark walnut stain on the coffee bar top. Because this was going to be a fairly heavily used surface, I wanted to be sure to give it ample protection. So after the stain had dried, I covered the top with 3 coats of polyurethane just to give it lots of protection. And then we were ready to attach it. So after the last coat of poly had dried, we attached the top to the rest of the coffee bar. And then it was time for the big reveal. Dramatic reveal music. Let's go ahead and break down the costs. So these instructions do a great job of laying out all the materials that you're going to need ahead of time. And that was actually the list we used to buy all our materials. We just took the instructions with us, went right down the list, and bought everything we needed. So we got 4 1x4 boards for $36. We got 4 1x3 boards for about $21. And then we got 1 1x2 board for about $8. We got a sheet of 1/4 inch plywood for about $30, a sheet of 3/4 inch plywood for about $66, and then for all the miscellaneous odds and ends, the door hardware, the paint, the stain, the wood glue, all those kind of odds and ends, I rounded up and just threw in an extra $80. So for right around $250, you too can build your very own modern farmhouse coffee bar. So be sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for the second part of this coffee bar build, where I add a couple floating shelves up above that really tie the whole space together. So thanks again to everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time on the Backyard Builder. See ya.